computer, I think. Hello, welcome to our fourth session. I can't believe it. After this session, we're 2/3 of the way through, so there are 2 more weeks left. So if there is anything that you want covering next week and you weren't here in the live session, please do send me an email, because I'm going to do a hodgepodge of things next Friday, and then we've got one more session left. So speak now, let me know. Is there anything that you'd like me to go into more depth about, or that I haven't covered that you want to cover? Okay. Before we move into this big pot of pain discussion, last week was an incredibly information heavy session. So this week it's a little bit lighter, and we're going to be pretty much focusing on one approach with pain. Just a reminder that this is, you are the experts in you. So some of these things that we're talking about they won't be for you, or they might not be for you right now, or they might not ever be for you. So don't feel that you have to do any of these tasks or exercises, because what we're looking for is balance. Whatever's affecting the mind or the body will inevitably affect the other. So they're interchangeable. So what you're experiencing and going through either way, regardless of which side of the fence an issue originates, imbalances in thinking can create imbalances in physical, emotional, and spiritual functioning. Recovery from any significant condition or life challenge is a gradual, progressive, and ongoing process of restoring balance in these areas. I mean, if not within life, finding balance, I don't think we ever reach an equilibrium, but we're kind of playing with it, and hopefully the ups and the downs aren't quite so rough and jagged. I'm thinking about a seesaw here. Hopefully it's kind of a smooth, and then we get a bit of calm, and then it goes up and down again. What we're learning to do is to listen and to pay attention, to notice, adapt what we can and where we can, and move into acceptance of the things that we can't. So over the last 3 weeks, you've been an impartial witness to yourself, exploring, listening, paying attention where you might not ordinarily have done so, or maybe you haven't had the time to do some of these exercises, but they'll be useful for you at a later date. So this is all a toolkit of things that you can come back to and build on. But essentially, it's about looking at what does living well look like to you, and are you doing it? That's kind of the crux of well-being. So this is in your toolkit so far. You've got this average day, observing your day, what's nourishing, what's depleting, what's neutral. With this sort of idea that most of your day should be fairly neutral and mundane, but you can see the beauty in that occasionally. And you can observe your routines and make changes where you can. The idea of a well-being appointment, you've got something to look forward to once a week, once a month, once a year. This could be that sometimes when we're feeling overwhelmed, that there's this, okay, I'm gonna do this. I know that if I do this, I'm gonna feel a bit better. So slotting that in and keeping that time like you would to those elusive dental appointments. I've introduced a square breathing technique, which is something that you have at your fingertips now, or not if it's not helpful. And in the second week, we looked at present moment awareness. So this interconnects with daily life, checking in with ourselves and what we're doing, paying specific attention to these activities that we do on automatic pilot, like our shoelaces or brushing our teeth, that these are moments that we can drop into the present moment and activate this parasympathetic nervous system simply by bringing our awareness to the textures, the tastes, the colors, and that this soothes. This brings us into rest and restoration. This activates the reticular activation system to focusing on the intricacies, the sensory experience of what we're going through, that improving vagal tone. So all that neuroscience that we're doing by simply bringing our attention to a very ordinary activity. I then introduced the pleasant experiences calendar so that you've got an idea about what your body's going through every time you have a pleasant experience. So dropping from this thought process into actually what's happening in the body. And then there was the fatigue diary of just keeping a note, if that was helpful. Also something to be done when you're not feeling fatigued, because perhaps that's more worth taking the time over for you, is looking at what's working for you. And then last week I introduced, it was an enormous topic of sleep. So you were given the blank sheets to write yourself this in case of emergency plan for if you can't get to sleep and if you wake in the middle of the night. So something that you can refer to quickly when it can be overwhelming for us when we can't sleep and we get into this cyclical pattern of being frustrated with ourselves, this loop that just makes things worse. Then I introduced the unpleasant experiences calendar. So again, this is that invitation of looking at what happens in our bodies when we have an unpleasant experience, because we focus on the thought processes, the mental event, the mental things going on, but actually what's happening in our bodies. So it'd be interesting to know how you got on with that. And then there was the 3-part breathing space. So another formal practice to activate the parasympathetic nervous system. So bringing awareness to your body, gathering your focus into your breath, and then expanding your awareness from the breath to include all of the body. And every time I look through my slides, I find another spelling mistake. So my apologies for those handouts last week. I think I mentioned that in the email. Anyway, so I'm going to take a pause now and open this up to the live group. And for those of you accessing later, do let me know how you got on with those home practices. Okay, so where's that gone? That's not what I clicked on. So there it is. Okay, so these are the tools now. You can put them in your toolkit, put them to the side, use them if they're helpful, and leave them if they're not. So this week we're going to explore pain. Now I am going it from a non-medication perspective. That's I'm not a pharmacist or a doctor of medicine. So I want you to have a think about, just for a moment, just to pause. And I want you to notice what your current experience of pain is, what you can notice. So I have to close my eyes to do this. So what I'm inviting you to do is kind of scan around your body, your head, your shoulders, your arms, your back, your belly, your left leg and your right leg, and kind of like you're using a magnifying glass or a torch beam, or you're investigating. It's sort of like an empty room and you're shining your torch around looking for something. So for me, I can feel something on my top of my right shoulder, and I can feel something on getting my left and right mixed up, my left just above my hip. So just want you to drop into your body and if you can notice any pain. Where is it specifically? Okay, we don't need to do anything about that, just noticing. So I'm going to be reading through an article by a man called Dan Mager, and he's written a lot around pain, and he runs pain resolution programs. Between stimulus, and this book is referenced a lot, Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl, if you've heard of it. It's a beautiful book, very short read. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. So Viktor Frankl was a doctor and psychotherapist who was in Auschwitz, and he talks within his book about how people managed and how people survived in such an extreme space of suffering. And that was essentially what he said: pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. So before I move into that article, I just thought I would share that there was a big shift in how pain was viewed within the medical world around 30 years ago. So basically, the American Pain Association pushed for the treatment of pain as a fifth vital sign alongside blood pressure, temperature, pulse, and respiration rate. So before this, the 80s and before, doctors would check for blood pressure, temperature, pulse, and respiration rates in terms of kind of a beginning of looking at well-being and how somebody was doing. And then pain was added in. And this resulted in hospitals across the US introducing this smiley face pain scale. And this began to really take hold in the 2000s, and it required that doctors prioritize pain treatment. So doctors said that policy resulted in patients, in effect, writing their own prescriptions because medics faced disciplinary action, including ethics hearings, if they did not satisfy demands for pain relief, even in cases where it endangered patients. And this had a catastrophic impact on the opioid crisis, which is still a massive, massive problem in the US at the moment. So suddenly it became important that doctors focus on pain in a way that they'd never had to do before, and the immediate response to this pain management was these opioids. So it's a whole can of worms looking into that, and there's I can link you to some articles around that when you get these slides. So so another way of kind of using our stepping out of our story around pain is this idea that sometimes it can't be fixed by the things that we're doing, but it's how we respond to it. So now we're going to move into this article that Major wrote. So physical pain has distinct biological and psychological components that effectively represent stimulus and response. So the biology of pain is the signal transmitted through the central nervous system that something is wrong. The psychology of pain is the interpretation or meaning we give to that pain signal, the internal self-talk and beliefs about it, which then drive our emotional reactions. So the suffering results from the mental and emotional responses to pain. The biological and psychological facets of chronic pain combine to become like a smoke detector that goes on and stays on continuously, sounding like a harrowing alarm at high volume. So recovery from chronic pain distinguishes between the actual pain and the suffering it causes, and focuses on achieving relief from that suffering. That pain is unavoidable, but suffering is not. It occurs in response to thoughts such as, why me? It isn't fair. This is horrible. I can't stand it. I can't bear it. And suffering in general, as well as specific to chronic pain, is a function of imbalances in physical, mental, emotional, and or spiritual functioning. So it's a wide perspective. This is why we've been looking at so many facets of well-being. So suffering is both the cause and effect of the catastrophic cognitions and distressing emotions associated with chronic pain. So we've got anxiety, irritability, anger, fear, depression, frustration, guilt, shame, loneliness, hopelessness, and helplessness. Negative thinking only makes situations we believe to be bad worse. Many people, including those who do not suffer from chronic pain, can ruminate on something by continuously and unproductively replaying it in their minds or magnifying the negative aspects of it. Our thoughts have the capacity to make us miserable, and negative thinking can be especially insidious, feeding on itself and with the potential to become a self-fulfilling and self-defeating prophecy. So again, thinking about the reticular activation system, this is that bit where we can walk around and look around and see all of the dog poo everywhere, or we can look up and see the beauty of the buildings and the countryside that we find ourselves in the Languedoc, as an example. So this negative thinking is natural for the brain. It's part of our survival system. So again, it's not something to be beating ourselves up about. It's normal. Our body wants to protect us and to keep us alive. So anything negative it wants to avoid, and anything pleasurable it wants to be drawn to. So if you are experiencing chronic pain, and you may not be, you may be experiencing pain every now and again. But in terms of chronic pain, there's a direct correlation between negative thinking and the level of pain that people experience. It's a vicious circle, a bit like with that sleep pattern of where we're like trying to get to sleep and we make it worse for ourselves. So in this circle, wherein pain triggers negative thoughts and self-talk, which translate to feelings that coincide with suffering and increases muscle tension and stress. So we tighten, we brace, we clench our jaws, we furrow our brows, we breathe in the top of our chest. So all of these things then feed in and make this experience of pain worse. And that amplifies pain signals and triggers more of them. The progression is essentially as follows. Pain leads to negative thoughts, self-talk, beliefs, which lead to feelings of frustration, anger, anxiety, fear, sadness, depression, and hopelessness, which leads to suffering, which leads to muscle tension, and stress leads to more pain, leads to increased negative thoughts, self-talk, So there you go, the cycle. And the more out of balance we become. Suffering can be modified when people become consciously aware of this chain reaction and learn how to respond differently to their pain. So where we paused and just noticed the pain. So we stepped out of a story and we went, okay, well, where is it? Okay, it's here and it's here. That's information. Okay. And when we step out of our story, it takes around 3 seconds for the parasympathetic nervous system to be activated a little bit. It says you're okay. Which lowers stress and muscle tension and leads to less pain. So I won't go into the full details because you'll have these handouts. Don't want to waffle on. So let's try it again. So let's just take a pause, an invitation to drop into your body and shine that spotlight around. Now you might find there are new things that have popped up. Is there anything painful here? Just checking in. Is there anything pleasurable going on here? Can you feel the softness of the clothes, the warmth? I'm just noticing that my feet were cold and they're not anymore, and that's really pleasant. Checking in with your face, your posture, your arms, your back, your belly, your chest. And let me ask you just to have a check. Are you breathing through your nose and out through your nose? This is physiologically the most beneficial for our body. Not always possible. And your lungs, are you able to fill them around the belly area rather than just the upper chest? I just want you to take a moment. Is there anything that's standing out here that you haven't taken care of that perhaps you should have? Like a glass of water or some stretching, going to the toilet, little things that can be pushed away, that can become a big problem and change the trajectory of our day as we let these things build up. You're hungry, have you had enough to eat? And then opening your eyes. We have a choice. Your body is present. It can be nothing but present. Your toes, your knees, your hips, your hands. But our minds are constantly either in the past or either in the future. And this is perfectly normal. This is what our brains are for. This is what makes us, this gives us this extra portion of our brains that the animals around us don't have. So pause a minute because I can see. So when we drop into our body, we take this time to notice. And this is what we've been doing over the past few weeks, is gathering this information about what we're doing with our time, how we're using it, and we've been exploring what's happening within our bodies. When we step out of the stories and into what's happening into our bodies, we get another version of events. And not that it's any better or any what do I want to say? Yeah, that it's not that it's any better, it's just that this is an opportunity to explore what's going on, and are we taking care of ourselves in the way that we should be, to meet our needs and to be living well. So the choice. So with that short exercise, mindfulness meditation is exercise for the brain. It helps the mind shed unhealthy thought patterns and builds mental muscle that can make it easier to cope with the unpredictability of a life after a cancer diagnosis. Using the breath or other techniques, we bring deliberate, non-judgmental attention to the thoughts, emotions, and bodily sensations of the present moment. We're not monks, we're not nuns, we're living our lives in this modern world with the demands that life presents us with. So it's not that we're doing this all of the time, it's just that we're practicing these techniques from time to time to support building up this grey matter, to give us an opportunity to respond, giving us the opportunity to see that we have a choice as to how we respond. So the potential from several studies around mindfulness as an intervention tool, particularly around pain. Most of the research is around pain, and it was developed for people who had exhausted all avenues within it. I think it was the late 70s and early 80s. They'd had the surgery, they'd had all the medications. This is before the opioid crisis kicked off. Anyway, so mindfulness was introduced as a technique. So it's taught in a very specific and clinical way as a secular tool now. So lowers levels of anxiety and depression. It increases the grey matter density of our brains. People have reported less pain, distress around symptoms reduced, and that people have an easier time managing stress, fatigue, and going about daily activities of daily living. The brain. So we've been talking a lot about the brain over the past 3 weeks. So your brain develops through neural connections, and it doesn't ever stop being able to develop this grey matter. It doesn't get any bigger after I think it's the age of 8, but we can build new neural pathways, which is why we can make changes. And these are responsible for thoughts, sensations, feelings, and actions. When you repeatedly do an activity, you strengthen the neural connections involved, which develops the associated regions of your brain. For example, if you're a taxi driver, constantly navigating different routes, you strengthen those neural connections and develop spatial reasoning. By paying more attention to the present moment, we can lower our stress hormones. When these chemicals in our bodies decrease, we become less anxious. We're better able to incorporate innovative ideas and new ways of thinking about our experiences. So like with the sleep stories last week, this ability to step out of our stories and go, okay, well, maybe this isn't actually how it has to be. And it gives us that opportunity to switch out of these stories about how things should be, and we can soothe ourselves. So by using intentional directed focus, we pay attention to the now and become aware of intrusive thoughts, allowing for changes to thought patterns. And we've been doing this within those home practices of observing your days, of observing how you react to pleasant experiences or unpleasant experiences, of dropping from here into what's happening here and listening to this information, because this can inform our choices just as well, if not better sometimes, than this guy here. So this is what a brain looks after 10 minutes of meditation. So you've activated that parasympathetic nervous system, you're soothed, you're calm, your body's better able to manage stress in this situation. Not always Not great for everybody, so important to note that. So we've looked at the emotion wheel. We just as a way of kind of learning to listen to ourselves and to pay attention. The more emotionally literate we are, the more we're able to step out of the stories and into what the actual experience is. And in the same way, we can do this with our body. Okay. So I'm going to lead us through a short body scan. And in the way that we've paused throughout this session this week to drop into our bodies and notice pain, notice what else is going on, we're now going to just explore different parts of the body. So as you actually, I'm going to just change my position a little bit. So just settling. I'm going to do this. I'm not going to do it for too long. We've not got much time left. So let's just do this. What should we say? I'm going to do 6 minutes. Let's give it 6 minutes. Okay, so you don't need to worry for too much. As best you can, you could do this lying down. So it's going to be part of the home practice, and lying down is a good one. And as I said earlier, I have to do this with my eyes shut. So that's it. Okay, so I just want you to settle into your body, and I want you to bring your awareness to your left foot and what, if anything, you can notice here. Is there anything unpleasant? Is there anything pleasant? Or is it fairly mundane and neutral and not much going on here? You might want to wiggle your toes if you can't feel anything. Can you feel nail beds? Or the balls of your feet or the heel of your foot? And where does your foot end? Is it a clear line or is it sort of a blurred edge? And then moving your attention away from the left foot to the left lower leg, between the ankle joint and the knee joint. So muscle and bone here. You notice the fabric of your clothes against your skin. Can you notice warmth or coolness? And then moving your awareness to your upper leg, between your knee and your hip joint. What can you notice here? Heaviness, lightness, warmth, coolness, tingling, shapes, colours. And then moving across from your left hip, across to your right hip, and then all the way down to your right foot. So we're narrowing and widening the lens of our attention. So your right foot, what can you notice here? Any sensations? Cool, warm, pleasant, unpleasant, neutral? As best as you can, dropping into the felt sensations. Noticing your body that generally goes about its business, not drawing our attention too often, unless we bang our little toe against a chair leg, then we remember our little toe, don't we? But right now, what can you notice here? This unsentimental body that just gets on with it, generally letting us know its needs when extreme pleasant or unpleasant experiences arise. And then moving your attention away from your right foot to your right lower leg, what can you notice here? You including your knee? There can be juicy spots of information. Got that soft crease at the back, and then that patella that sort of floats there that we're not born with. It causes discomfort. What can you notice on your right knee today, right now? And then moving your awareness away from your knee, up to your upper leg, thigh. What can you notice here? Heaviness, lightness, colours, temperature, textures. And then moving your awareness away from your right leg to the lower part of your trunk, and I'm going to say beneath the rib cage, so a little cross section down to the hips. So you've got bone, skin, organs. You might notice the rise and fall of your belly with your breath. What can you notice? What's most present for you? As best you can, stepping out of the story into your direct and felt experience. The mind will wander, telling you, what on earth are you doing? You could be doing something really interesting. This is boring. There's a shopping list to do. Each time you notice that it's wandered off, bringing yourself back to your body and the sensations that you notice here, because you're interesting, you're extraordinary. What's here? What's going on? Did you have enough to eat for lunch? Can you hear the bubbles? Does your body digest your food? And then moving your awareness away from the lower part of the trunk to the upper part of the trunk. So cross section of the upper back and shoulders and chest. You might notice your lungs a little bit more here, your heartbeat. Can you notice the subtle movement of the breath as it expands to the sides and the back? Really tiny movement. Your ribs expand ever so slightly to allow your lungs to fill with air. And then moving your awareness away from the trunk area altogether, let's bring our attention to our arms, the hands, the wrists, the lower arms, the upper arms. Do they feel heavy, light? Are there cooler bits than others? Are they warm, tingling? Listening and paying attention. The shoulders, maybe you're noticing warmth at your armpits, fabric of the clothes against your skin. And then moving your attention away from your arms to your neck. It separates the air from the food or the saliva that we swallow, holds our heavy head, allows us to talk. And then moving your focus to your scalp. What can you notice here? Your face, checking for any tension or tightening. The forehead, the eye sockets, the jaw. And moving your awareness to your ears. Experience of sounds. And then an invitation to expand your awareness from your ears to your face, your head, your neck, your arms, your trunk, and your legs. Your body as a whole, breathing here. Having taken this time to take an active step in taking care of your own health and well-being by being here. It's not easy. Lots to do. And then an invitation to narrow your awareness to your breath. Breathing in and breathing out. And then opening your eyes. So there you go, I threw a meditation in there. let me pause the recording. So the sun's moved and in my eye now. So this week's home practice, we're going to be continuing to add a few tools to the toolkit, and of course you're welcome to use any of the others that are available to you. So this is the simple prescription of activities designed to support well-being. So they are an invitation, you don't have to do any of them. There's a body scan. So once a day, undertaking a 10-minute body scan. So this is information gathering tool, and that has the bonus of activating your parasympathetic nervous system. I'll also include a longer one of 40 minutes if you feel like you want to go a little bit deeper and you're enjoying those more formal mindfulness practices. Then there's the pause. So I want you to stop, check in with yourself 3 times a day, as we did within this practice. It can be helpful to set an alarm for yourself. So it's a quick scan from your head down to your toes, or could be your toes up to your head. I just want you to just be having checking in with yourself. How am I? Am I okay? Are there any unmet needs? Because this can change the trajectory of our day. Things like, have you had enough rest? Have you had enough nourishment? Have you had enough water? Are you comfortable? Do you need to change your socks? Do you need to cut that label out of that jumper, rather than letting these things kind of irritate us all day and impact on our overall well-being? Because these moments make up our days, which make up our lives. These little things matter. I was rushing to bring shopping in and I needed the toilet, and what I should have done is gone to the loo and then got the shopping out of the car, but instead I carried too many bags, one dropped, and then not only did I need the loo, but I then had to pick up lots of things that were rolling out into the middle of the road. Just like made things really just that much more tricky for myself than was necessary. So sort of observing these things where we trip ourselves up and make things more difficult than they need to be. And an invitation to have a look back at the first session with a life well lived. I want you to check in on yourself. Are you incorporating these things into your day? Do you need to book in some more wellbeing appointments? Do you need to be taking some things out that you are stressing you out? You signing yourself up to do many things, to do too many things for others and not taking care of your own needs and letting yourself down, or inevitably perhaps letting others down. So as always, if you've got any questions or queries, please do reach out. You are very courageous for having taken part in this first series. So if you've got any feedback, I am at your disposal. So have a great week. Thanks for joining me.